Arguably, the world's oldest profession is farming. For centuries, civilizations around the world have relied on farming as a means of survival, as a way to make a living, and most notably, as a way of life. It's a hard living, though, and few ever get rich through farming. You have to love it. However, despite the hardships, there are other rewards, perhaps greater, that make the storms worth weathering. Here in the Northwest, we boast some of the world's top producers of wheat, barley, lentils, and other crops. We market them locally, nationally, and worldwide. Our continued diligence in discovering and implementing new strategies for crop production have helped keep the United States competitive with other producers around the world. It's through years of scientific research and the steadfast faith of farmers that have led to a more sustainable, profitable, and marketable approach to raising healthy, clean crops. The direct seeding approach to cropland farming promises to eliminate tillage altogether and offers better water retention and infiltration, a reduction of pesticide use, improved soil and air quality, while creating a more environmentally friendly habitat for wildlife. Not to mention the pinnacle of benefits, it can increase your bottom line and create a sustainable farming practice for future generations. What kind of farming practice can benefit the environment, the public at large, and continue to earn a profit for the farmer? Direct seeding is a method that disturbs very little of the soil, as specialized equipment opens a narrow strip, allowing the seed and fertilizer to be placed in the soil without disturbing much of the residue from the previous year's crop. Adopting a direct seed cropping system allows growers a unique opportunity to improve uses of land resources while making it possible to grow crops more frequently than every other year, especially in lower rainfall areas where rotation is limited. Direct seeding can be used anywhere you grow crops, including irrigated croplands, but holds even greater promise for dryland crop areas. Dick Whitman operates a direct seed farming operation near Lapwai, Idaho.
The best thing I can say about direct seeding is it's a win-win for the farmer and it's a win-win for the consumer. The farmer has hope in my mind that this is a system that will be sustainable for a long time. It will allow me to remain profitable, but it will allow me also to not mine my soils, that I will be able to build up the productivity in this production resource where I can pass this on to our future generations in a better condition than we may have inherited it. And from the consumer standpoint, they have the assurance that they're going to continue to get a affordable food supply, high quality, that's produced in an environmentally positive manner. And they're concerned about food quality, about wildlife habitat, about air quality, water quality, all these things. And I'm excited about the fact that our methodology is going to provide the right kind of end results that the consumer wants in all those environmental aspects.
Direct seeding is a revolution in farming practices. It's as revolutionary as the change that took place when farmers converted from horses to tractors. Although startup costs are similar to conventional tillage farming, converting to direct seeding involves investing in new equipment. And the transition to direct seeding requires a change in how you think, a certain patience, flexibility, and openness to change. There are risks involved, but there are a number of growers in the Pacific Northwest that have made the change and are finding success with direct seeding methods. Enterprise, Oregon is the home of some very dedicated direct seed farmers, the Melvilles. Tim adopted direct seeding over 20 years ago and was one of the first practitioners in irrigated crop systems. His two sons, Kurt and Kevin, have never farmed any other way. Together, this family farms over 2,000 acres in the Wallowa Valley. Some of it's their land, some is leased, but all of it is direct seeded. The Melvilles see the primary advantage to direct seeding is the increased economic efficiency, but they've also seen increased yields, increased soil quality, and better water retention.
20 years ago, when we were conventional farmers, we would turn a center pivot irrigation system on and water would run off the field. The soil was not capable of soaking up that water, and we would run the pivots at a fairly fast rate of travel so that we were only putting on 0.15 of an inch of moisture per revolution, and we'd make a rotation about every 8 to 9 hours, and water was leaving the field. And now, after 20 years of direct seeding, we have got to the point where the circles are on a 4-day rotation instead of an 8-hour rotation, and we're putting on approximately 0.75 of an inch every time they go around, and no water leaves the field. It all soaks up. We used to have big ruts in the field that were washed out and carried down with the water. We no longer have that. There is some water occasionally in the springs. Like I say, when the snow melts, the water does run off, but it's almost, basically almost clean enough to drink. And instead of being a chocolate milkshake in your hand, it's a lot cleaner than that. We've seen several situations where conventional tilled farmers just above us on the hill slope would conventionally till it, get it ready to seed, and then a thunderstorm would come along, and that water would carry that mud right down out of their field, leave big ruts in their field, and the standing stubble in our fields would capture that soil on our side. So we would gain several inches of soil, and they would lose several inches of soil. You don't need to see that more than once, and it'll convince you that you need to be doing something different.
Although the different geographic challenges require different views on crop rotations, the Melvilles have learned how to meet the challenges of diseases, weeds, and residue by using a variety of crops and rotations.
Well, one of the things, we're starting to get where we're with proper crop rotation, we're starting to use a lot less pesticides in fields. We're learning how to control our wild oats better, and of course with the environmental push of today, it's the less pesticides you can use, the better. The more crop rotation you can find and the more you stretch things out, the less chemical and herbicide use you'll need. So that's definitely a benefit if you can get the rotations to do that. Probably every person that's sat here will tell you the same thing. Well, how do I make money on these rotational crops, And so we have the same challenges, just that we might have a few more options.
So when you start talking about rotation, then you're constantly searching for an alternative crop that'll make a little bit of money. Something that'll give you some kind of a return and control your weed problems and your disease problems. So when we are planning 2 to 3 years ahead of time what we want to produce on a given field, what kind of problems that field has now, what do we need to do, what do we need to get in that rotation to solve those problems so that we can make our maximum money on our wheat crop, because it's still our maximum producing crop. So we rotate to from wheat, barley, peas, canola, a little bit of alfalfa hay, a little bit of clover, and occasionally we have grown some bluegrass.
Experts such as Jim Tier of the Idaho Fish and Game Department agree that direct seeded fields, such as those provided by the Melvilles, create perfect habitat and forage for these animals to help them survive.
Pretty much all crop residual is pretty good for wildlife. In this case, we got standing wheat, stubble. It's very high quality, it's nice and tall. For upland game birds, which we're talking about pheasants, quail, gray partridge, it provides two things. It provides forage, as in residual sucker heads, waste grain. It's really important. It carries them through the winter. When it's left adjacent to good winter areas where it's got woody cover, it's extremely important. When the stubble's left tall enough, it also provides a really good protection area from predators, so basically they can get in there and hide while they forage, and it's really important for populations that way.
The Melvilles see this change that's taken place on their own land and welcome the unexpected boom in wildlife.
I remember as a kid there was no pheasants or Hungarian partridges here on my dad's place, and now when we're during harvest season you can find lots of Hungarian partridges and pheasants just all over the ranch.
I can remember trying to go out when I was 10, 11, 12 years old and find a pheasant on our property and hunt all day long and never see something. And now we find a lot more wildlife, a lot more deer, a lot more birds.
Today's farmer owns less land than he leases. That's a fact. And direct seeding is a departure from traditional farming. So you'd think it might be a hard sell to convince a landowner that direct seeding's the right thing to do. Tim Melville found just the opposite.
80% of our land is leased, only about 20% is owned. And we have noticed here a change over the last 5 years where the potential landlords that we visit with are now beginning to ask for and in fact require that we direct seed their farms. The last 2 leases that we have acquired, it is written right in the contract that they will be direct seeded. And if we vary from that system, then we're no longer welcome tenants on that land. So that's the way we see the land lease game moving, is towards more stewardship of the soil, and the landlords that are moving in here from the cities and buying this ground just for retirement or whatever their needs are, they are requesting a direct seeder take over that land. So we think it's the wave of the future.
We've just really only touched the tip of the iceberg, and every year I see our yields creeping higher, and we're finding those little variables and changing those variables every year to improve our yields. And I think in the years to come, hopefully we'll be actually farming less acreage with higher yields, and because of the direct seeding system, having a greater net income on fewer acres to make up for what we need as a family unit, which means less time and less inputs.
Harrington, Washington lies within the rain shadow of the Cascade Mountains. There, fourth-generation farmer Carl Coopers continues his family's 135-year-old battle to retain moisture while fighting erosion. Carl converted to direct seeding over 30 years ago because he felt the way things were going, the farm and land would not be sustainable for future generations.
And in my opinion, there was no way that we could continue the traditional way of farming out here with that understanding that they, the society, would eventually ask for changes and demand changes. And I was never one to want to sit around and wait for the government or some agency to tell me how to farm. That's obviously part of the independent nature of farmers, I suspect. And so that was my vision. I could see that coming down the road. I knew there needed to be we needed to make a change if we wanted to be around here for the next 20 or 40 or 60 years.
A continuing conflict between farmers and the public is the issue of decreased air quality due to field burning and dust. Direct seeding practices not only reduce windborne chemicals and dust, but also greatly reduce the need to burn. Also, soil tillage accelerates the breakdown of organic matter by adding oxygen to the mix, releasing carbon dioxide into the air. Some commonly refer to carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. Regardless of whether the theory is true that blames increased carbon dioxide for contributing to the greenhouse effect, direct seeding leaves crop residue on the soil surface, allowing the organic matter to slowly break down and contribute to the overall topsoil quality. Carl has proof that direct seed practices leave carbon in the soil instead of allowing it to take to the wind.
Most vivid, and the one that has been shown most recent, is we actually have scientific evidence that we have sequestered 2,000 pounds of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere annually per acre over the last 5 years. Carbon is the basic building block of plant life. So in time, that carbon, as it starts to release and break down, it's going to rejuvenate my plant life. My ultimate goal is to get to a point where this carbon, as it continues to break back down, will give me free and available nutrients to that plant. And it should eventually reduce my need and my use of fertilizers, and certainly in time, hopefully reduce my need for pesticides and all of that.
Like the Melvilles, Carl also found it a fairly easy sell to convince his landowners that direct seeding their land would have multiple benefits.
First, you have to be convinced yourself. You have to understand it, and you have to gain that commitment. But once you've gained that commitment, then you go to the landlords and you confess that commitment. And it's pretty easy, really, because when you describe a direct seed system mimicking nature, everybody can grasp that so quickly. And it seems like they embrace it so readily that when they tell me they can't convince their landlords, I question it.
Although Carl is committed to direct seed practices, he stresses that it's not for everyone.
If you're doing it because you're already economically in trouble, it won't work. At this point in time, it won't work. As we get further down the road and we develop the new varieties and we develop the stronger technological backing of the system, as we develop the markets and the accessibility of those markets is better, probably, and hopefully, obviously, hopefully. But during the early stages, you're going to see some declines. First off, you have to make a few transitions in equipment. That means you're going to be making some capital expenditures. Long term, there's no question that you're going to reduce your costs in equipment alone, in replacing iron. You don't have near the iron in a no-till system as you do in a conventional system. It is well documented in areas other than the Pacific Northwest that have had long-term success in no-till.
As Carl mentioned, although direct seeding can benefit both the farmer and the public, it's not the instant cure-all for a struggling farming operation. You can make money at it and save more money by using fewer resources, but it may take some time to make that transition.
Most operations that are transitioning to direct seed find that they're looking at a minimum of 5 and probably closer to 7 to 10 years to get into a stabilized system where all the things that they've now changed, from tillage systems to chemical control systems to finding a combination of drills that does all the things they like.
Jim Cook has spent years conducting research on the benefits of direct seed and is a longtime proponent of the no-till approach.
Well, economically, there's really two sides to the coin. On the one hand, there is the savings, and on the other hand, there is the additional production potential. In fact, we don't know the full yield potential of crops grown with direct seeding. What we do know is that it's way higher than we're getting. We also know that conventional farming is maxed out in terms of yield. We're not going to see another yield incremental increase with conventional farming. No matter what we do with our varieties, we will maintain yields and we will move incrementally very slowly upward, but with direct seeding, with that additional water, we have a whole new yield plateau to shoot for.
As Dr. Cook noted, it's highly possible with a direct seed system to increase yields while decreasing costs. And that's a ratio to which every farmer aspires.
Using the results from a study of a farm operation that was moving from a conventional direct seed system, this is one example of what kind of results can be achieved. Asset turnover ratio literally doubled from 0.5 to 1.05, and that was a result of generating twice the revenue with the same capital assets, combination of efficiency and growth in an operation. Profit margin ratio went up significantly from about 12% to 16%. Return on assets went up almost 2.5 times from 6% to 17%. But the bottom line, which is the ultimate combination of many of these previous variables, return on equity went from approximately 4% to 23%. The results that people are going to see will vary from farm to farm. And there's no assurance that everyone will hit a home run when they make these transitions. But in actually working with some farmers and having them package their information in a way in which they can compare their performance during conventional tillage eras to a more modern era where they're fully engaged in transition into direct seeding, some farmers have achieved some phenomenal results.
In the lower rainfall area near Heppner, Oregon, the Jepson family farms about 3,000 acres. They made the transition about 4 or 5 years ago, have embraced it completely, and are pleased with the results. This is truly a family farm, and the entire Jepson family is committed to making this farm a success.
My wife helps me, and I have 5 children, 3 that are still at home, and they all help here on the farm. And my dad, who's in his 70s, still comes out and helps a little bit. So we don't have any hired outside help, and that works well for us.
Even with the school work and all the normal chores and hobbies, the kids still enjoy working around the farm, partly because it puts a little spending money in their pockets, too. The family cleans seed and sells it to neighbors and uses it themselves. Everyone gets involved in that process, from helping clean the seed to loading it in the truck and moving the trucks around for dumping. Since adopting the direct seed approach, the Jepsons have noticed some positive changes compared with the way they used to farm. They spend less time on the tractor and use less fuel to run it. Some farmers using direct seed practices claim that less time on the tractor has allowed them more time for other pursuits. But Bill Jepson hasn't seen that benefit yet.
Well, I have to be honest, I thought where I wouldn't be putting all that time on the tractor, that I'll have more time to spend with the family, maybe more time to hunt and more time to fish. And I found that's probably not really true. The time that we spend spraying, the time that we spend doing weed control and other things have pretty well taken that up. And the fact that we're now harvesting twice as many acres, harvest is a longer process too. So for me, the workload has stayed about the same. I don't mind that, that's good. But, if you think you're going to save time, for us, it didn't work out that way.
They also found they could grow different crops, as well as spring crops, but have found that because of the low rainfall of the area, different crop rotations are not as successful, so they grow mainly continuous cereals. Since the land they farm is shallow and composed mostly of silt loam soil, they need a better set of tools to help with their constant battle against erosion. They were pleased to find that as a result of direct seeding, they kept more moisture in the soil, which translates to less runoff and far less erosion.
Where we farm shallow soils here with just 2 to 3 feet of soil, with the erosion that we've had, if we continued farming exactly the same way in about another 100 years, there'd be a lot of ground here that probably couldn't be farmed. With the direct seeding techniques that we're doing now, I think we actually reverse the problem and have got the soil quality headed back toward the positive side instead of the negative side. When you walk on ground that's been direct seeded for several years, it feels kind of like a thick carpet. It's just spongy feeling. And the amazing thing is, we used to spring seed here, just scare us to death, because if we got 15, 20 hundredths of rain on it after we seeded it, it just crusted over like a clay pot, and the seed couldn't make it through it. Crusting is a thing of the past. It just virtually doesn't happen anymore. It's amazing. There's a different structure to that soil in that first 2 or 3 inches. And it's really positive.
The increase in water retention and the decrease in soil erosion that the Jepsons experienced is a common benefit of direct seed practices. The crop residues sitting on porous, undisturbed soil will also hold the soil in place, reducing sedimentation and keeping chemicals from entering streams and riverbeds. Aside from a reduction in possible contaminants to neighboring water sources, the soil itself begins to rebuild with direct seed practices. A reduction of tillage results in less soil disturbance, while allowing residue to slowly break down. Organic matter is introduced to a nutrient-starved soil, which enhances soil microbiology, making a great home for an extremely diverse makeup of bacteria, as well as earthworms. Getting excited about earthworms seems a little strange, but those earthworms are a great indicator of soil health. John Ashelman has had his ground in direct seed for over 25 years. He farms just outside of Colfax, Washington, and has seen tremendous changes in his soil over time, specifically its ability to take in water, and the health of the soil is always improving. John feels his soil is healthier and more productive, all because of direct seeding, and he's quite proud of his earthworms.
Because these guys are really working. So what's happening is they become your plow. They're nature's plows, as someone coined that expression one time. They're nature's plows. They actually work your fields for you. We feel that the microbial activity in the earthworms are all causing this, the soil, to be able to absorb the moisture. And of course, there's a lot of nutrient exchange that's going on at this time too, in this layer. So we wouldn't. When you go to a conventional system and you work this all up, you lose a lot of that.
Soil microbiologist Dave Bezdacek agrees that increased earthworm activity is a great indicator of the soil being regenerated.
If we take a look at this soil in this particular case, we can see that it's dark. It means it has soil organic matter in it. We have crop residues that provide food for our soil microbes. In a number of our fields of no-till, we see that the earthworm population increases dramatically. We can see numbers of earthworms anywhere between 100 and 300 per square yard. This translates into about 1 ton of earthworms per acre. And the cast that these earthworms produce is generally much, much higher in soil nutrients. We've seen an increase in soil nitrogen, soil phosphorus, and a more favorable soil pH. When you go into a no-till field, you may see things like this, and this is the channels of the earthworms as they move through the soil. They open up the soil, they allow rainfall to move in, and they also leave behind in their casts enzymes that help decompose crop residues.
The direct seed approach to farming is proving to be beneficial in many areas vital to profitable, sustainable farming. Those growers in direct seed systems have seen increased cost efficiency, better soil conservation, and decreased erosion, improved water infiltration and moisture retention, increased soil biological activity, more wildlife around the area, and content landlords that are pleased with the results coming from direct seeded land.
I can tell you that the excitement that I get up with every morning is certainly different. The excitement that I'm having working on this marketing, it's never been there before. And that excitement transfers across to your spouse, obviously, and how happy you are when you come home at night, and you know, all those things, they're big, and they're a big part of it.
The direct seed approach provides a workable, sustainable solution for farmers, along with measurable reductions in environmental pollutants. It demands patience, flexibility, and openness to change, but the proven benefits show a viable, promising future for the economics of the farm and the health of the soil and the environment.
If you've never direct seeded, I'd go out and try get one field on your ranch and start there. You know, I wouldn't just convert everything all at once to direct seeding, because it's a major learning process, and you'll have a lot of failures that you probably can't withstand financially if you do it all at once.
Well, if I were to start fresh today and look at what is the most successful approach to making a transition to direct seeding, the first step is to look at it as a cropping system. It's not about what you do to raise one crop. It's how you go about defining an optimal cropping system for your farm, where you have the right combination of crops in the rotation, the right approach to tillage, the right approach to residue management, the right arsenal of chemical and fertilizer inputs that it takes to control pests and also maximize productivity.
We are going to have the capabilities in the years to come to see even more advancements in technology, even more advancements in drills, in herbicides and chemical usage. There's going to be numerous ways for us to improve.
Be patient. The science is coming. This is the direction we're going. And if it's not this generation of farmers, it's going to be the next generation of farmers that will move in this direction. We don't expect this to happen overnight. We've been a 30-year transition already, and we're up to 10%. But that curve is now going to go, just like the adoption of colored TVs from black and white. Suddenly it'll take off as the science gets in place. So stay tuned. This is going to happen.